أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين صدق الله العلي العظيم. السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ. مومنین کرام، خمسہ مجالس کی آج تیسری مجلس کا انعقاد ہو رہا ہے حسینی ایسوسیشن آف خیال گری. میں بغیر کسی تاخیر کے میں ملتمس ہوں عباس مومن بھائی سے وہ آئیں اور سلام پیش کریں. بار دیگر بلند تر صلوات.
ایک بار پھر سے صلوات پر محمد و آل محمد محمد و آل محمد. مولا مقتل میں سر کو جھکا لاش اکبر پہ تنہا کھڑے، دھیمے دھیمے ٹپکتے ہیں آنسو، ہائے سگرا کا خط پڑھ رہے. بولے کیا میں جواب اس کا دوں، بولے کیا میں جواب اس کا دوں، ہائے سگرا بتا کیا لکھوں، ہائے سگرا بتا کیا لکھوں، ہائے سگرا بتا کیا لکھوں. میں تو پردیش میں لٹ گیا، اپنے لشکر کو میں رو چکا، تیرا بابا غریب ہو گیا، تیرا بابا غریب ہو گیا، اور اس کے سوا کیا لکھوں، ہائے سگرا بتا کیا لکھوں، ہائے سگرا بتا کیا لکھوں. آندھیا میرا گھر لے گئی، میرے لکھتے جگر لے گئی، میرا نور نظر لے گئی، میرا نور نظر لے گئی، اور اس کے سوا کیا لکھوں، ہائے سگرا بتا کیا لکھوں، ہائے سگرا بتا کیا لکھوں. خط تیرا اب سناؤں کسے، کون میری صدا پر اٹھے، سب کو جاگے ہوئے سو گئے، سب کو جاگے ہوئے سو گئے، اور اس کے سوا کیا لکھوں، ہائے سگرا بتا کیا لکھوں، ہائے سگرا بتا کیا لکھوں. ہائے سگرا وہ پائی تیرا جس نے تجھ سے وعدہ کیا، کھا گئی اس کو کرب و بلا، کھا گئی اس کو کرب و بلا، اور اس کے سوا کیا لکھوں، ہائے سگرا بتا کیا لکھوں، ہائے سگرا بتا کیا لکھوں. پیار تو نے تھا جس کو لکھا، کٹنیوں بھی جو نہ چل سکا. ہاں وہ اصغر بھی اب نہ رہا، ہاں وہ اصغر بھی اب نہ رہا، اور اس کے سوا کیا لکھوں. ہائے سگرا بتا کیا لکھوں، ہائے سگرا بتا کیا لکھوں. اب سکینہ کا حافظ خدا، وقت زینب پہ بھی ہے کڑا. مجھ کو گھیرے ہوئے ہیں قضا، مجھ کو گھیرے ہوئے ہیں قضا، اور اس کے سوا کیا لکھوں. ہائے سگرا بتا کیا لکھوں، ہائے سگرا بتا کیا لکھوں. یہ تو اچھا ہوا لاڈلی، اپنے گھر میں ہی تو رہ گئی. میری دائی سے تو بچ گئی، میری دائی سے تو بچ گئی، اور اس کے سوا کیا لکھوں. ہائے سگرا بتا کیا لکھوں، ہائے سگرا بتا کیا لکھوں. خط وہ ریحان و سرور تھا کیا، خاک سے میرا مولا اٹھا. لاش اکبر پہ خط رکھ دیا، لاش اکبر پہ خط رکھ دیا، اور اس کے سوا کیا لکھوں. ہائے سگرا بتا کیا لکھوں، ہائے سگرا بتا کیا لکھوں. صلوات پر محمد و آل محمد.
عباس مومن بھائی کی صحت و سلامتی کے لیے بلند تر صلوات. اللہم صلی علی محمد. بغیر کسی تاخیر کے ملتمس ہوں برادر مہدی رضا بھائی سے وائیں اور مرثیہ پیش کریں. ہماری دیگر بلند تر صلوات.
امام زمانہ بلند تر صلوات. اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد. علی اولاد علی بلند تر صلوات. اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد. مسکرائے خون تر ہو کر قضا کے سامنے، مسکرائے خون تر ہو کر قضا کے سامنے، سرخ رو ہے کربلا والے خدا کے سامنے، مسکرائے خون تر ہو کر قضا کے سامنے،
خیبر و خندق میں آخر سب دلیران حرام ہو گئے بے دست و پا دست خدا کے سامنے ہو گئے بے دست و پا دست خدا کے سامنے اور چیر ڈالا دونوں جبڑوں میں انگوٹھے ڈال کر اور لاؤ شیر کو اژدہا کے سامنے مسکرائے خون میں تر ہو کر قضا کے سامنے پوچھ لو جو پوچھنا ہے مجھ سے منکر نقیر ہو گئے خاموش کیوں مشکل کشا کے سامنے ہو گئے خاموش کیوں مشکل کشا کے سامنے کر چکا طے منزل راہ شہادت کارواں ایک منزل ہے ابھی زین العبا کے سامنے اور اس سے بڑھ کر صبر کا اظہار ممکن نہیں چادر زینب چھنی زین العبا کے سامنے مسکرائے خون میں تر
اللہم صلی علی محمد وآلِ محمد
مرثیے کے چند بند پیش خدمت ہے فاتحہ بروح شہداء بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم
اللہم صلی علی محمد وآلِ محمد
سے جب ہو گئے رہا مختار قید کوفہ سے جب ہو گئے رہا اور اختیار تخت حکومت پا مل گیا مارا اسے جو قاتل آل نبی ملا فی النار جب کہ ابن زیاد نہیں ہوا فی النار جب ابن زیاد لئی خوش ہو کے شکر خالق کونوں مکا کیا ایک نام پر تو جانبے یسرب رواں کیا عرضی لکھی یہ عابد عالی مقام کو مارا ہے قاتلان نے شہ تشنہ کام کو مولا یہ آرزو ہے یہ صدنا غلام کو حضرت اتارے رختے عزائے امام کو سیدانیوں سے کہیے نا آہو بکا کرے کھائیں پیئیں غلام کے حق میں دعا کرے پائی ہے میں نے یہ بھی خبر اے امام دی بیٹھی ہے سین خانہ بی بی کوئی عزیز ڈر ہے مجھے ہلاک نہ ہو جائے وہ کہیں فنار ہو چکا ہے دن کاہل دل کو سنبھالے ابلی اصغر کا واسطہ سائے میں بیٹھے سبتے پیمبر کا واسطہ نامہ امام عصر نے مختار کا پڑھا بیت الشرف میں جا کے یہ معصومہ سے کہا یہ اوس اور دھوپ کی تکلیف تا کچھ اما ہمیں یہ ختم ہے مختار نے لکھا ہوگی ہمیں خوشی اگر آرام پایا میں بھی یہ چاہتا ہوں کہ سائے میں آئے مخدومہ نے سنا جو فرمائے امام کا رو کر کہا اٹھاؤ اگر ہے یہی رضا دیکھا کہاں بھر کے سوئے دشت کربل ہاتھوں کو جوڑ کر بسا اندو یہ کہا میں جیتے جی نہ اٹھتی کبھی اس مقام سے مولا چلی ہو سائے میں حکم امام سے یہ کہہ کے اٹھنا چاہنا اٹھا گیا مگر سب بیویاں لپٹ گئی جلدی سے دوڑ کر اٹھی نہ تھی کہ سوئے جنا کر گئی صف رو کر پکارے حضرت سجاد نام لے کر چلی ہو بیویوں کی خوش سرشت کو اما روانہ ہو گئی باغ بہشت کو اٹھی تھی جس مقام سے وہ صادق البیان کہتے ہیں ایک بگچا بھی
بساط گہوارے کی جلی ہوئی کچھ لاکڑیاں ملی اصغر کے چند کرتے ملے ہنسلیاں مل اصغر کے چند کرتے ملے ہنسلیاں مل مختار قید کوفہ سے
جزاک اللہ اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد محمد خوشنودی امام زمانہ بلند تر صلوات اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد علی علی بلند تر صلوات اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد
جزاکم اللہ خیر. مہدی رضا بھائی، فراز بھائی، صفدر بھائی کی صحت و سلامتی کے لیے بلند تر صلوات. مومنین کرام، خمسہ مجالس کی 5ویں مجلس کا انعقاد ہو رہا ہے حسین حسین کیلگری کے امام بارگاہ میں. آپ تمام حضرات سے التماس سے دعائے صحت ہے برائے مولانا نجم الحسن صاحب، سسٹر نسرین اعزاز اور ہمارے ڈاکٹر اخلاق زیدی صاحب، اور جو مومن مومنہ جہاں بھی بیمار ہے، پاکستان میں، عراق میں، ایران میں، دنیا میں، کیلگری میں، اور جو بھی کووڈ-19 کے اس پینڈیمک کا شکار ہے، اللہ تعالیٰ سے دعا ہے کہ بیمار کربلا کے صدمے کے تمام مومنین و مومنات کو صحت و سلامتی عطا فرمائیں. اور جتنے بھی مومنین جو ہمارے ساتھ پچھلے سال ایام اعظم میں ہمارے ساتھ درمیان موجود تھے اور اس سال ہم سے دور چلے گئے ہیں، رحلت پا گئے ہیں، ان سب کی احصال ثواب کے لیے بانیان حسینیہ کی مرحومین جو تھے ان کے احصال ثواب کے لیے اپنے اپنی مرحومین کے لیے سورہ مبارکۃ الفاتحہ تلاوت فرمائیں. اور محمد و آل محمد بلند تر صلوات. صلی علی محمد. قبلہ مولانا صاحب کا لیپ ٹاپ اسٹارٹ کر رہے ہیں، جب تک وہ لاگ ان پھر سے ہو جائیں تو چند اناؤنسمنٹ ملاحظے فرمائیں. ایام ربیع الاول کے حوالے سے جو پروگرامز ہونے والے، جس میں عید زہرا، عید میلاد 9 ربیع الاول منڈے کو یہاں پر منعقد ہونے جا رہا ہے. 7 بجے ٹھیک پروگرام سٹارٹ ہوگا. اس میں مومنین کرام اور مقامی شعراء حضرات قصیدہ و منقبت اہل البیت اطہار کی شان میں پیش کریں گے. اس کے بعد قبلہ مولانا سید حاجی حسن صاحب جشن میلاد سے خطاب فرمائیں گے. اور ان خمسہ مجالس کے حوالے سے نوٹ فرما لیں جو بھی چینجز ہو رہی ہے اس میں. جب کل انشاءاللہ سیٹرڈے کو یہاں پر مجلس عزا سلسلہ شہادت حضرت امام حسن عسکری علیہ السلام منعقد ہوگی، تو مجلس کا اہتمام ٹھیک 7 بجے نماز مغربین سے اور پھر سلام سوز و مرثیہ کے بعد قبلہ مولانا اسد جعفری صاحب کی ریموٹلی اسپیچ نشر ہوگی. اس کے بعد ماتمی دستہ نواخانی کرے گا اور پھر ٹیک آؤٹ تبرک. سنڈے کی جو آخری اسپیچ ہے قبلہ مولانا اسد جعفری صاحب کی، وہ شب عید ہوگی، 9ویں شب ہوگی. اس دن سلام مرثیہ کے بجائے یہاں پر قصیدہ و منقبت سے پروگرام کا آغاز ہوگا. اس میں مولانا اسد جعفری صاحب خطاب فرمائیں گے، وہ آخری اسپیچ ہوگی. جیسے قبلہ نے اس سے پہلے بھی اپنی اسپیچ میں اس کا ذکر کیا ہے کہ جو امام بارگاہ ہوتی ہیں، مسجدیں ہوتی ہیں، ان کو بس بظاہر ہمیں مومنین کو آباد رکھنا ہوتا. اگر کوئی وجہ ظاہری وجہ نہ ہو تو ظاہراً پینڈیمک کی وجہ سے اور برف باری کی وجہ سے بہت سارے مومن آن لائن اس پروگرام کو دیکھ رہے ہیں، اور نارتھ امریکہ میں پوری دنیا سے ان سپیچز کو مومنین سن رہے ہیں. امید ہے کہ اللہ تعالیٰ ہمیں توفیق دے تمام مومنین کے سمیت کی قبلہ مولانا اسد جعفری کی سپیچ جو ہے لائٹڈ سپیچ ہے، تاکہ ہم ان سے استفادہ کریں اور ان کو اپنی زندگی میں عملی طور پہ اس کو جگہ دیں انشاءاللہ. بغیر کسی تاخیر کے میں ملتمس ہوں مولانا سید اسد جعفری صاحب سے इस मजलिस से अज़ा से खता फरमाए। बार दिगर बुलंदतर सलवात हुमा।
رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتحدون، الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان، ولعن الله أعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله وقوله الحق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا قوا أنفسكم وأهليكم نارا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Raising God-centric children has been our ongoing topic. Tonight is lecture number 3. Inshallah, as Riazbai just announced, I am with you until Sunday. We'll end off our Khamsai Majalis with a Shabi Eid, the program on Sunday night, and of course tomorrow night we'll commemorate the Shahadat of our 11th Imam. So we have, after tonight, 2 more discussions, and obviously this is a massive topic, one that requires at least 10 nights, but at least to scratch the surface and maybe touch on those things that I found to be relevant and prevalent in our society. And so far, we've talked about a couple of key concepts. Yesterday, we talked about the idea of tribalism and the concept of allowing your child to feel like they belong inside the family, making them visible, making them heard, allowing them to feel like they are a part of that tribe at home. Remember, we talked about the idea that the philosophy of tribalism is very fitri, it's innate. We all have a sense of belongingness that needs to be fulfilled inside of us. And once we've established a group that I'm in has accepted me in terms of its tribe and its group, then I will live by that tribe, I will die by that tribe. And in the beginning of a child's life now, in the first 5, 6, 7 years, everything is about the family tribe. And their entire Eid, their heaven, their Jannah, their everything is in that family unit. And it's important that in those, at least in those beginning years, that we build that base that family is everything. So if you have the luxury right now, listening to me, of having young kids, when I say young, I mean younger than 7, younger than 8, then you really have this beautiful opportunity to really cultivate that land inside of their hearts and to build such core concepts like, understanding your purpose, albeit at a very, 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 very minimal level, or understand the importance of family or God consciousness. All these things are important. And that we talked about yesterday, and I cannot stress enough how much I have seen, experienced in my life, and how when I deal with guys my age a little bit, in the late 30s, in their early 40s, and they have some mental health issues. They have anxiety, they have depression, they're not able to hold a job, they're not able to really keep the family together. They have anger issues. All of that sometimes stems from the idea that when they were young, they were invisible inside their home. Right? Always shushed, always quieted, never given any respect, never heard, never asked how they're doing, never, kind of asking them for their advice, all those things. No. And so in the process now, that you end up feeling like you are invisible, and that resonates with you, and that stays with you across sometimes decades. In tonight's discussion, I have several things to talk about tonight, and they're small things that I think that are very important. The first thing I'm going to do with all of you tonight is I'm going to start off with a story, okay, about my personal life, and the connection between me and my father, marhum. And I'll tell you why I'll be very quick. I don't want to make this into a personal story night, but I'll make it very quick, and then inshallah I'll get to my actual purpose. As I mentioned to you last night, my father, marhum, passed away when I was in my late 20s. And I was born and raised into a typical immigrant Karachi family. And, as much as I don't like to admit it, it's important that I do admit to myself that I saw my father as a typical Pakistani father. May not understand me, does not understand the mahal and society that we live in. I was raised in Toronto, went to school in Toronto, worked in Toronto before I went to the house in Qom. And so for many, many years, all throughout my educational career, my high school, my university, I never saw him to be somebody that I could actually seek advice from. And I really want my youth out there, especially, to listen to this point very, very carefully. If you have parents who are immigrant parents, if you have parents who are from India, Pakistan, or wherever you're from, and you believe for a moment that they don't understand you or understand the mahal or the environment or society because they were never raised in the West, then I want you to listen to the story for a moment. For several years now, throughout my high school, university, again, I saw my father as just a person who would go work, bring home, let's say, the groceries and pay the mortgage and, provide for me what I needed in terms of my living. And that's about it. This murabbi, this nurturer, this person who understood me, this person who helped me flourish, all these things, I never saw in him. I was so ignorant back then that I saw him as for the apparent. Even though he had amazing English, there's always an accent, right? I didn't see him as somebody who understood the West. And so, I believe that every issue I was going through was way beyond his understanding and expertise. So I never asked him for anything, never asked him for advice, never discussed it with him, never kind of picked his brain about things, nothing. Until I remember specifically in my mid-20s now, my early 20s now, I just graduated from university. I had my bachelor's degree in IT, and back then there was a big IT boom, in the late 90s, early 2000s, and here I was with my degree and not knowing what to do afterwards, and so I decided to ask my father for his advice. Badi himmat se, I came to him, I said, Dad, I'm kind of stuck now. I just finished my degree. What do I do? Blah blah blah. And the advice he gave me was amazing. I remember specifically a Thursday night driving from my house to the center. That's one thing my father, marhum, really placed inside of me. And again, I want to mention, like I mentioned last night, and Riaz Bhai did a little ishara right now in his announcement, that the building, the four walls, are vital for our spiritual growth. I really hope that especially my youth understood and appreciated the value of the community during this Ayam Azad this year. As much as there were some conveniences, as much as it was nice that the homes were converted into Farsh Azah, many people now are texting me pictures and messaging me that it was beautiful, Moulana. We converted our living room into this Azah Khana. There was black there's black chadars on the wall, or there was white chanis on the ground, and we set up nice alams, and we had our kids, and it was a very beautiful environment. We all sat as a family and listened to the majlis, and yes, that's beautiful. That's a silver lining. But the reality is that Imam Hussein was always meant to be grieved communally with the community. And hopefully you felt a little bit of that, and you missed a little bit of that community. So anyways, one thing that my father, Marhum, would really, really, kind of emphasize growing up was that Thursday nights was the night for the center. As far as I can remember, all the way before high school, in my grade 6, grade 7, whatever, I remember that Thursday nights we had to go to our center. Next day exam, I'm tired, I have a lot of homework. Nothing would work on my dad. He would say, I don't care. Study before. You get home at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We don't leave till 7. You have 3 hours to study, do your homework, prepare for your exam. Doesn't matter. 2 hours on Thursday night, you give to the center. So we would go. In the beginning, kicking and screaming, come on, Dad, come on, Dad. And eventually now I fell in love with Thursday nights. I found it to be, my escape, right? My recharge, my reset button, right? And I remember there will be Thursday nights where I would drive with my father in the car alone. And sometimes, immigrant fathers, I told you they're not very expressive. They're not very, kya hale beta or kaise ho beta. There really wasn't something that you would get from an immigrant father, right? But there'll be moments where he would show softness. So anyways, I don't want to be too long, but I remember that vivid conversation one time on a Thursday night. It was 12 minutes from my house until the door of the center, 12 minutes. And I had this talk with him where I said, look, Dad, this is what I want to do. What do you think? And his advice blew me away. It blew me away. I couldn't believe wisdom was coming out of this man's mouth. And here I thought, all these years, I thought that he didn't understand the West, didn't understand me, didn't know what was going on. And I didn't value his level of experience and what he has seen in this world. I had to be reminded this was the same man who at the age of 21 years old got up from Karachi and migrated to Toronto, landed here in the early 70s, not knowing the language, not having a job lined up. He had to learn the culture, and he worked every and odd job possible, 7 days a week, from security to flea market stalls to an accountant to a mailman. There was nothing that was beneath him for his family. And that wisdom, that experience, was far more than anything I've learned in school. I oftentimes say this to my parents out there, especially my older immigrant parents. Sit down your child and tell them your dastan. Tell them your story. Tell them your tarikh, where you came from and how you established. I remember one time, I remember specifically in one time, there's a lot of you, mashallah, right now sitting in front of me right now who have successful businesses, right? Whether it's, selling eyeglasses, or whether it's, I don't know, being an accountant, or whether it's whatever the case may be, but you didn't start off like that. There must have been a struggle. Arriving first initially from wherever you're from, learning the language, learning the culture, right? Bearing the cold winters of Calgary, for example, all of that. Now you get to the point where, alhamdulillah, you're established and now you're settled, and your kids see the settled part. They don't hear about the struggle part. Sit them down and tell them. I remember one time I met a brother in New Jersey. Beautiful family, beautiful religious family, from the father all the way down to the youngest child. And they were just, they had everything. They were very, very successful in the world. The doctor was a cardiologist. The father was a cardiologist, very wealthy, very humble, And one time he invited me to his house for dinner after one of the programs. It was me, and it was the 5 of them, him, his wife, and his 3 kids. And I asked him, I said, what's your story? And he said, Moulana, I arrived here in New Jersey from Lebanon with $50 in my pocket. $50 in my pocket, not knowing the language, not knowing anything. And I struggled and I hustled and I strived and this and that. And we got to this stage now. And he went on 40, 45 minutes telling me about a story. His kids had never heard that story before. And I could sense that they had more of appreciation for it, right? Anyways, when my father gave me the advice, then I realized that, wait a second, this is a wealth of wisdom that I have in front of me. So I kept asking for every single thing after that. Even in my decision for Qom, I went to Qom after he passed away. But during his life, I asked him, Dad, I want to go to the house. What do you think? And he said, get 2 things and you can go wherever you want in the world. Get your degree from the West and get yourself a wife. And take both the degree and the wife and go wherever you want in this world. It turned out to be amazing advice. Again, and one advice after one advice, I realized that all those years that I denied myself that wisdom was my own ignorance. Okay, was my own ignorance. And my point in this initial story in tonight's discussion is there's a lot of my youth out there, a lot of my kids out there who are struggling right now. They've hit rock bottom. They have no idea what to do. In their education, they're stuck. How do I process this COVID-19 era? Them and God don't make sense, right? They hang around with toxic friendship. I remember asking my father, Dad, I'm surrounded with individuals who bring out the worst in me. I had that much humor to say, I know that my friends aren't the best. This was back when I just had just graduated. And I said, what do I do about that? And again, he gave me brilliant advice. And I had to be reminded this was a man who was obsessed with my success. My youth out there, my kids out there, remember the 2 people, if you have 2 parents in your home who are the biggest cheerleaders for you, are your mom and your father and your dad. They will turn the world upside down to make you successful. They will go to the end of the earth to make you happy. They will provide you with anything you want, just succeed, study hard. Work hard, invest in your future. That's all they want. And so a lot of you out there who are 16, 17, 15, 14, 21, 24, who are struggling, who really are struggling, internal struggles. You have an addiction, for example. Let's say you have insomnia, you can't sleep. You're addicted to social media, for example. You have all these issues. You have nowhere to go. I'm asking you humbly, turn to your parents. Because now, when I realized that my father was this wealth of wisdom and this well of wisdom, I can go and kind of dip my bucket in whenever I wanted to, him and I got very, very close. Very, very close. In my mid-20s and my late 20s, when I was really establishing my marriage life and my career and everything. And then at the age of, I think, 27 or 28, he left this world. And while I have 1,000 regrets with him, the one regret that really stands out to me that makes me remember the story 20 years later is the fact that all those years I slipped and I fell, I slipped and I fell. I didn't have to slip and fall if I just turned to the man in my house and say, Dad, what do I do here? My point is that I want to speak a little bit in the beginning tonight in the idea of tarbiyat of the child. Should be tarbiyat that should be taken from the parent, that should be accepted from the parent, that shouldn't be tarbiyat that you do what? That you fight your parents on. Okay? We're stuck sometimes on tone. We're stuck on sometimes on, how they say it. And I understand how they say it is very, very important. But what's more important on how they say it is what they're saying. When you have this wealth of wisdom inside of your home. Now, provided that as parents, we open that door. Remember, one of the most beautiful sunnahs of the Holy Prophet was his approachability. Imam Sadiq, Imam Baqir alayhimus salam, they had open door policies in terms of knowledge. Anybody who wanted an ounce of knowledge should come to the door. So you have stories of atheists coming to our 6th Imam, Jews and Christians coming to our 5th and 6th Imams, enemies of theirs coming now to somehow trick them and ridicule them. And of course, their lovers and their Shi'as as well, right? So we also have to be an open door, approachable policy when it comes to our kids. If they come to you and say, you know what, I have a problem now. I have this addiction. I have this drug addiction, Dad. I have this alcohol addiction, Dad. The last thing he wants to hear is how horrible of a son he is, how much God hates him. He's coming to you with tears in his eyes saying, Mom, Dad, I need this help now. At that moment, put aside the judgment and help him or help her. If she comes to you and says, Mom, I want to wear hijab. Wallahi, I do, but it's just hard for me to cover my hair. I don't know what my friends might say. I don't know what my coworkers might say. I don't know what my potential husband might say. And none of that. So it's just, please help me with that tawfiq. Give me that strength. And so the first point I want to make tonight is that please don't make the same mistake I made. That for years and years I kept falling and tripping and scarring myself and making all sorts of blunders and mistakes when I didn't have to. There's a man like my father in my house, or a woman like my mother in my house, that just wanted the best for me. And one day, someday, inshallah, if you meet my mother, she's half my size. Itni badi hai shayad ammi, right? But her heart is of gold. It's of gold. You know, and again, I thought to myself, you know, she can barely speak English, and I thought, oh, okay, you know, what does she know? She got married at 16 years old, right? She had all of us by the time that she was, you know, in her early 20s, and you know, so I mean, you know, my point in the beginning is that if today's youth want to be successful, always remember, the more sources of guidance and hidayat that you surround yourself with, the better chance you have to be successful in this very difficult world. Remember, shaitan went from shaitan to shayateen, right? He went from one shaitan to multiple shaitans, meaning he has an army. He has a group that he throws at you and throws at you and throws at you at all various angles. He says, right? وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ وَعَنْ أَيْمَانِهِمْ وَعَنْ شِمَالِهِمْ, from the front, from the back, from the right, everything, flat out, he says, I will misguide them from all angles. If that's the case, if there are multiple avenues of misguidance, of inhiraf, of no tawfiq, there has to be the exact same, if not more, avenues of guidance. One of them are your friends. One of them are the ulama. One of them are your parents. And it brings me to my second point, where now the ulama do bahas. They argue. They discuss, when does the tarbiyat and the upbringing of a child begin? Okay. When does the path of tarbiyat now begin? When does that upbringing begin? And interesting answers now. Some say flat out that it actually begins before the child is even born. It begins in the spousal selection phase in your life. There are some of you right now listening to me who, alhamdulillah, have reached that age now where you can start thinking about your spouse, right? And if you forget, oh, your parents and your friends and your community and that one auntie at Husseiniya will remind you, beti shadi kar lo, right? And while this is not a pre-marriage course, but you know, maybe one day, someday I'll come to Calgary and do a pre-marriage course. It is important that we understand that part of the selection process is that you are selecting the potential parent of your child. And I wish, you know, sometimes I wish that things were changing, and sometimes they are, but still, you know, I always get this. I always get phone calls, by the way, that we're looking for our son, we're looking for our daughter, blah blah blah. I go to Koi, hey Moulana, please boliya, tell me if there's anyone you have in mind. You know, you travel and you go here, you go there, blah blah blah. And then when I know I set myself up real bad when I asked them, okay, what exactly are you looking for? Let's say in a potential bahu or potential daughter-in-law, the first 5-6 characteristics are all physical: the color of her skin, her height, her weight, her eyes. You know, halki awaz hone chahiye. Halki awaz hone chahiye. How do I tell you this girl has a halki awaz? I don't understand, right? So, you know, we're still kind of settled on this idea of everything is superficial. I'm sorry. Yes, beauty is important, no doubt about it, but it's not number one or the first 4 or 5 on the list, right? The reason why Imam Sadiq says that you should first look at God consciousness as a selector for a spouse is because not only is this person going to take you towards heaven, this person will take your, inshallah, potential children towards heaven as well. So ask yourself, do I see this person being the mother of my children 15 years from now? Do I see this father leading my family and me and my kids towards Jannah or not? And I know it's hard to gauge in 4 or 5 conversations, but at least think about these things, right? And that's why it's important that while we're raising our kids, and if I can come to my third point, when we're raising our children, we have to be balanced in our raising. That's the one point I really want to strike home tonight, is the idea of a balanced upbringing. And when I say a balanced upbringing, I don't mean equally upbringing your children. That's not what I mean. A failed parent is the one who gives the same level of tarbiyah to all of their children. No, you don't do that. If you're a parent right now looking at me who has 3 or 4 children, more than 2 or more than 1, for example, you know that each of your children are individual entities. They're very, very separate. If they're separate, they require separate upbringing. Right? The example that oftentimes is given is that of a gardener. Right? The job of the gardener is to make sure that the rose grows and the tulip grows and the dandelion grows and the daffodil grows and the carnation grows and all of these grow. But his kamal, his perfection as a gardener is to know how much water the rose needs, how much the water tulip needs, how much food, let's say carnation needs, how much sunlight, let's say the daffodil needs, all these things. A failed gardener is the one who applies the exact same water for all flowers, exact same food for all. No, every flower requires different elements to grow. Right? You as a parent, me as a parent, we're gardeners inside of our home. And 4 of our children are 4 flowers in our garden. Every flower requires something else to grow. That's what I mean. I don't mean, when I say balance, I don't mean the idea of now, doing the exact same thing for everybody. No, when I say balance, and please follow me, it's a little bit of a hassas conversation. It's a little bit sensitive, but Mashallah, Husseini knows me very well. I can say these things now with all of you. I've earned my stripes with all of you. There's no taqallawat between us, right? When I say balance, I mean between a son and a daughter. It's not balanced, I'm sorry. I feel like daughters are always raised with the idea that one day she's going to be somebody's wife and somebody's sister-in-law and somebody's daughter-in-law and somebody's mother. And so as far as I can remember, and as far back as you want to go, you'll begin to prepare her for life with her sister and her in-laws. Okay, so if she sets the table, for example, and she puts rice, let's say, on a plate and puts it inside of puts it on the table, and then puts the wrong spoon inside. You know how there's a khas, rice spoon, there's a khas salad spoon, there's a khas salad spoon, and if you don't get it right, then you literally now are sitting there, telling your daughter that, okay, make sure when you go to your sosral that you use this spoon for your chawal. Now you might be laughing at me, but we teach our girls, right, how to dress in front of non-mahrams, how to laugh, how to behave, how to sit, how to act, correct? We tell them that ek din tum, bahu banogi, ek din tum wo banogi, ek tum wo banogi, make sure you do this, do that, right? When she's 10, when she's 15, when she's 16, right? We start collecting things for her jazz. We start, even before her wedding night, even on the wedding day, on the nikah day, reminding her, dekho, Larna mat saase, for example. Don't go there and fight with your mother-in-law. Make sure you keep your husband happy. And we do all of this now. We raise her for eventually her next phase in life. We do it all the time, right? Right? We grill her that, okay, make sure you sweep properly. Make sure you vacuum properly. We do that for the girls, but we don't do that for the boys. I'm sorry, we don't. Do any of us raise our sons to be leaders of tomorrow? That one day you're going to be the wali inside of your house. You're going to be the leader inside of your house. You're going to be responsible for taking your family to Jannah. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, the verse I read from the khutbah, qu anfusikum wa ahlikum nara, protect yourself and your family from the fires of this world and the fire of the hereafter. Both of them are included in naran in this verse. And the one individual who's responsible for that is the wali of the house. The one who has the steering wheel inside of his hands. And that's the father, that's the husband, that's the man of the house. Do we raise our boys to be leaders of their family? Or do we raise our boys to be tomorrow's man-child? Where, we coddle this boy, we serve him food on a tray, we do his laundry, we fold his laundry, we do everything, right? When he comes home from work, we make him coffee, hi mere bacha, hi mere bacha, hi mere bacha. And in the process now, we end up making him completely dependent on you. And then when he's 24, 25, this dependent man-child, we give to this bachari girl, Lije ab shadi kar le unse. You marry him. And now she's inheriting this man-child who needs to have his laundry folded and needs to, have the hadiyah removed from his biryani, right? Needs to have his chai perfectly garam when he comes home. Ye lije. And meanwhile, you're thinking, I'm not your mother, because he'll say that that's not the way that my mom does it. Do we raise him now to be somebody who has a strong work ethic? Or are we raising lazy boys? Are we raising, mehnati bache, like I said, individuals who know that no matter what happens, pandemic, no pandemic, I have to put food on the table of my family? Are we raising boys to have enough spiritual enough taqwa, let's say, for example, to be able to not only give it for himself, but give it to others? Imam Khomeini, rahmatullah alayhi, has a very beautiful discussion. He talks about the tullab of the hawza, but by extension, it's also for us parents. He says that, remember, when you go out there for tabligh, you are holding a jug of water. You're the source of water for people who are very, very thirsty. They come to you with a cup and you pour your water, right? And make sure that your water doesn't run out, right? That you've only brought 3 jugs of water and there are, mashallah, 10 jugs of water, the water that's needed. Well, that's the only amount of water that I had, right? That's all I have. Okay. Are we raising boys to give them enough taqwa and piety from a very, very young age, telling them you need to protect, for example, your family? You need to go out and earn for your family. You are the hunter. Go out and now do all this. That's your job. It's not the job of the woman to do that. If she does it because she wants to, that's her nobility. Even that, whatever money she makes, is her money. You would never believe how many cases I have that come to my table and come to my phone where the man could be working, he's at home because he's stressed out or because, I don't know, he can't, and this woman is working 2 jobs. And then he complains that she has no respect for me, Moulana. Well, buddy, you're at home waking up at 11 o'clock in the morning, right? You're nothing but on the phone or on Facebook all day. Or I have husbands that sit there and complain to me that I have to also pay for my wife's expenses. Yes, you do. That's your job as the wali. We want the walayat, right? We want the leadership, right? Right? I'm the man. I'm the man. Take it. But with that comes responsibility. And that responsibility is to lead your family towards Jannah, to wake up your family for Fajr, to make sure the Quran is being read inside of your home, outside the month of Ramadan, to make sure that when it's Adhan time, when it's Namaz time, the Adhan is on, and maybe lead Jamaat inside your home. But that doesn't come overnight. It's not fair on that girl that you're about to make your daughter-in-law, that you're giving your son, who's a man-child, he doesn't even know how to make his own cup of tea, that look, this is all yours now. I've raised him, now you raise him. You're like, whoa, I'm his wife. I'm not his mother. Too many cases. So I urge you, be balanced in your tarbiyat. If you're going to prepare your daughter now for 20 years from now, also prepare your son for 20 years from now. Teach him the value of money and budgeting. Teach him the value of fixing things around the house. Teach him the value of knowing, let's say, for example, what to do in this situation. There's too many man children out there. I'm sorry, too many. Right? So we have to be very careful in our upbringing and ensure that we are balanced in all of that. Okay. My last point tonight, before Masayib, it's already 10:33. This will take a little bit of time, is the idea that I talked about in the beginning of the speech, that the tarbiyat begins before the child is born. So you get married to your spouse, and you've been married for a couple of years, and sometimes, usually new couples, sometimes they wait a couple of years to have a child. It's a good idea, if you ask me, to wait, depending on what age you're at, but it's good to kind of come together and spend some time alone and kind of like mend and harmonize and synchronize and then bring a child in. Anyways, before that child is even born, before you even think about trying to have a child, you and your spouse have to sit down and ask yourself, what is it that we want to raise? What kind of child do we want to raise? And form what I refer to as a family identity. Look, this society has corrupted itself so much to the point where you can't have it both. You can't be secular and spiritual at the exact same time. Okay? Something has to give. You have to sacrifice something. I remember growing up, okay, me and my 3 siblings, 4 of us, my mother and my father would sit there. We would watch on television half an hour of a family comedy program, a sitcom. Okay. Clean, no problems. We all enjoyed it. We all had a laugh. And that's it. And that's how life was back then. Nowadays, you can't watch YouTube ads with your children. So this is a different era. You can't simply go with the flow to find out, let's see what happens. Put them in Sunday school here and there. Make sure you bring them to the wafat or make them bring them to the majlis or the jashan here and there. There has to be cultivation of the deen inside of the home from a very young age by both parents. Again, that era is gone. That zamana is gone, where one parent can take over for the spiritual journey of the child. Both of them have to do it together. This is a different generation. They're bold. They'll call you out. If you're asking your 10-year-old daughter who's now baligh and wajib, did you pray namaz today? Go and pray namaz today. She'll turn around, she'll say, did you ask Baba if he prayed namaz today? I didn't see Baba pray namaz today. Is it not wajib on Baba? What does Baba say? Or the idea that, it's 10, you're 10 years old now. Can you start to wear hijab now? Maybe you can start wearing hijab to the store and then to school and blah, blah, blah. But mama doesn't wear hijab. Mama sits there and does her hair for an hour before we go out anywhere. Why can't I do that? How come I have to wear hijab and she doesn't? It's collective. I talked about input, output already the first night. The input will match the output. We're not expecting miracles here. It's a very 1 + 1 = 2 equation. Right? What kind of family do you want to have? And then you work accordingly. So right now, even if your children are older and you and your wife or you and your husband haven't had that talk, because what's happening nowadays is there's 2 separate paths now. Either the woman is skyrocketing towards Allah, Jabbi Dekho, she's in ziyarat, or mashallah in some Dua Nudba group, or she's having Zoom classes, or she's having these Zoom sessions, or she's attending these Zoom programs, and she's, the notes and notes and notes and notes and notes, and the husband has no dilchaspi whatsoever, no sort of, desire to be part of it whatsoever. To the point where the wife complains to someone like me, can you at least mention sometimes that the fathers also have to be involved in that? Or sometimes I see the father goes every year for Hajj, every Ashura in Karbala. Moulana, I've done 10 years of Ashura in Karbala. I've done 7 Hajjs, mashallah. Have you taken your wife ever? No, Moulana, I can't take my wife to Karbala in the first 10 days. Why? No, she's too slow. She packs too much. She's all these nakhre. She needs this. No, it's me and my Mola, my Mola, my Mola. In the process now, you're separating the journey together. And the journey had to always been together going towards Allah, not two separate paths. That only happens, the two separate paths, when you don't have a family identity. What are you trying to raise? If you don't have a family identity, you're going to raise confused children. On one side, telling your child that music is haram, and the very next weekend, attending a mixed wedding where the music is blasting. Teaching your 10-year-old child about, hugging a non-mahram boy, and she's watching you the week after, on the day of Eid, for example, hugging your non-mahram cousins. That's confusion. That's a double standard. That's hypocritical. And if that keeps up, the output also will be hypocritical, double standard, confused. And when you're confused about something, when you don't like something, you walk away from it. So even right now, like if you have older children and you haven't had that conversation, sit down and have that conversation. I've had parents come to me and say, I want my child to wear hijab, but my husband says no in front of her. Take off that hijab, put that hijab back on, grow that beard, shave off that beard. I want to pray namaz-e-shab. It's too early right now, but to live your life a little bit and then, enter namaz-e-shab, for example. There's only one parent taking all the kids to the centers in every program. The other parent has no sort of work. And this is a problem. Let's look at the way Imam Ali describes Sayyidah Fatima sallallahu alayha. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Let's examine that for a moment. Okay. Days after his nikah to Shehzadi, the Holy Prophet is asking Imam Ali, how did you find my daughter? Everything okay? What's the update? How are things with Fatima? It's a tough question, right? Your father-in-law comes to you and says, day 3, day 2, first day, next day, everything okay? What do you say? What do you tell your father? Yeah, your daughter's great. He could have said anything. Imam Ali could have said anything in praise of Sayyidah Fatima, but instead, his one sentence is beautiful and such an encompassing statement for families today. He says, Ya Rasulullah, I found in Fatima the ultimate hamsafar on the journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The ultimate travel companion. I mean, if anybody could travel with Imam Ali towards Allah, it's your Fatima. It's not two separate paths in the home. You and your husband, you and your wife are on one journey towards Allah. The essence of Tawheed is the harmonizing of all of you into one path. As a family, we grow towards Allah. As a family, we pray towards Allah. Not that, you're going to Karbala, let's say, for ziyarat, I'm going to go to Cuba for vacation. Or you're going to go here, I'm going to go here. No. I'm telling my kids that turn off the television, and in the very next room, my husband is blasting the television, for example. I'm telling my kids that, don't watch any movies on this streaming device, and he's, there's some music that's blasting, a movie or music in the other room. You're bound to create very, very confused kids. And these kids, I'll tell you, man, Birdie Himmat said, they'll flat out say, why is that happening then? Family identity. What is your identity? If you want to be a pious family, today's day and age requires a lot of sacrifice. A lot of sacrifice. You can't go sometimes where your own cousins go. If you belong to a large family, and a lot of you and your first cousins now got married around the same time. You have all the same age children, and there's pictures being posted on your WhatsApp group. Oh, took the kids to the beach today, and the beach is packed, mashallah. There's all sorts of non-mahram women there who are dressed inappropriately, and you and your family, because you are trying to cultivate a certain Islamic identity, you don't go to places like that. Now your child will turn out and say, "Oh my God, it looks so fun. How come we can't go swimming in the beach?" or your first cousins with their kids went to, let's say, for example, the biggest wedding in the community, and mashallah, it was, a dance fest, mixed gatherings, all sorts of stuff. And of course, right, everything is posted online. Everything is social media. And of course, on your WhatsApp groups, there's 16 pictures being shared, bing, 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 all in one shot. And your 12-year-old daughter says, oh my God, that looks like a lot of fun. How come we didn't go, Baba? We were also invited. Now you can sit there and say, oh, I wasn't feeling that. Or you could say, Baba, we're not, or you could tell your daughter, we're trying to be, a little bit different in terms of our journey towards Allah. And this is where the crux of tonight is, okay? We have to now begin at a very, very young age, if possible, to begin to tell our children it's okay to be distinct. It's okay if the world is going towards this way and we go the other way. That's okay. It's hard, yes. It's lonely, yes. It's boring sometimes, yes. But that's the investment you make for the hereafter. When Imam Ali in Khutbah Hammam describes to Hammam who the pious ones are, he says, Hum ahlul fada'il. They are people of distinction. They stand out from the crowd. They don't mend in the crowd to the point where you don't know where they begin and the crowd ends. There are some of my youth out there who belong to very spiritual families, who they themselves are really trying hard, but for some reason they feel the need to fit in. So they'll post ridiculous things on social media. They'll make these absurdly immature TikTok videos. They'll do all these things just to kind of fit in. Oh, it's fun. Yeah, it's all fun. It's all fun until it takes you away from your purpose, until it stains your soul, until you end up becoming someone that you never dreamed you would become. Cultivate the family identity, and that comes from the top, the husband and the husband and the wife. And if you are a single mom out there, and may God bless you, then you have to cultivate that within yourself, and then be okay with all the sacrifices you're going to make to cultivate that identity. There are some people, for example, who have canceled their cable inside their home. There's some people, for example, who don't go, to half the events that their own family go, and they get all the comments, right? Holier than thou, you think you're better than us, Badi mazhabi hai tum log, oh my God, you're so extreme. And you have to take all that because you're cultivating an identity, and be strong in that. Alladhina jahadu fina linahdiyannahum subulana. Allah says, you strive in my way, you struggle in my way, I will open up doors for you. I will. Just stay on the path. Don't go anywhere. Don't sell your soul because your second cousin saying, oh, is it hard? Yeah, it's hard. It's hard, but the hadith says the more difficult the amal, the higher the reward. In the end, when you now end up having children who are God-fearing and pious, then that becomes something that you're proud of, and sometimes the sacrifice is worth it. I get told all the time that, you really keep your kids in a bubble, Moulana. Yes, I do. I keep my kids in a bubble. I keep my kids under a rock, absolutely. They have zero exposure to any of this stuff. And I know eventually it can't keep up, but for as long as I can to avoid them in certain social norms, I'm going to. And that's my choice as a child, because as a parent, because me and my wife have sat down, we've had a talk about how and what kind of kids we want to raise, and this is what's required to raise the kids. And we have to be okay with the ramifications of having these losing friends, for example, maybe even, if, for example, you can't go to the beach because it's packed with people who are dressed horribly, then on that day, do something that your child would enjoy, just to make up for the fact that she's not part of those 16 pictures being sent out in one shot in 3 seconds to our WhatsApp groups, okay? So I've thrown a lot at you tonight, I'm sorry. But I want to all these are connected, okay? The give and take is very, very important. Think about the story of my father. Then from there, understand, please, if we're going to raise, if you have the luxury of having a boy and a girl inside your home, be balanced. Because I'll tell you what happens. In the imbalance, the girls end up now having a distaste in their mouth. And they end up equating the way I was raised to Islam itself. So if they didn't like the way they were raised, or they didn't like the fact that, my brother always got a free ticket, my brother always got everything, my brother was the king inside of the house, then they start to believe that's how the deen is. The deen is chauvinistic, right? The deen is a woman bashing deen. The deen is a male centric deen. All because of the way that they were raised, all because of the way that their boys in the house were raised as well. And finally, my point is that we want to make sure that we cultivate a family identity. Ask yourself on the way home tonight, if you are there in the center, or right now after I log off or after the majlis, what is our identity? What are we trying to raise here? The four of us, the five of us, what are we trying to accomplish? And have we made the necessary sacrifices? Again, those days are gone. You can have a little bit of this, a little bit of that. There has to be a conscious decision. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu istajibu lillahi wa lirasuli idha da'akum lima yuhyikum. Or you who believe, right? Answer the call of Allah and the Prophet when they invite you towards that which will bring you life. If Allah is selling life, saying, look, this is my version of life, come and say labbaik to it, then are we ready as a family to say labbaik to it, even though we know it's going to make me a little bit distinct? So that oftentimes up and down this Muharram, I talked about this one example, that you are in a room, you're about to enter a room, there's 100 people in that room. 100 people in that room, all of them are wearing a bright white t-shirt. A bright white t-shirt. And you walk in, you have a fluorescent pink t-shirt. Fluorescent pink t-shirt, and you walk in right through the crowd knowing full well that while that walk is happening, every eye is on you. My God, look at that pink shirt. Because a pink shirt in a sea of white, ooh, it stands out. A bright yellow shirt in a sea of white stands out, right? And you have to be okay with being distinct. You have to be okay with being I'm not saying alone or isolated. The word that Mawla Ali used was hum ahlul fada'il. They are people of distinction. They stand out in their character, in their ibadat, in their taqwa. That's what I want you to raise with your kids. Let them stand out. Remind them that, look, we're not trying to achieve that. We're somebody else. Not that I'm higher than you, but I'm on a different journey than you are. Then Mama, how come she doesn't wear a hijab? She's my second cousin, same age. I don't understand. She wears t-shirts. Sometimes she wears high pants, but I have to wear hijab, abaya, or I have to wear long shirts or socks and sleeves. Why? And you have to now remind your 12-year-old, your 15-year-old that we are trying to be a different family. And don't worry about anybody else. Pray to Allah to keep that tawfiq inside of you. And that's okay. Be okay with the fact that I'm not wearing a white t-shirt, but rather a very, 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 very bright yellow t-shirt. And all eyes will be on me, maybe of judgment, maybe of envy, maybe of jealousy, who knows? You have to be okay with that. That requires tarbiyat, nurturing, building, flourishing from a very young age. And we see that up and down the Shuhada of Karbala. Up and down the Shuhada of Karbala. It's last weekend of Ayam Azan now. And this Ajib nation that we call the Shias that would anticipate their grief and look forward to their gham and decorate their sadness. The heart is now feeling a little bit Ajib that, in a matter of a couple of days now, this Ayam Azan will be over, and then the black walls and the majalis and all of this raunak that we have all be on a live platform online is all going to be gone. Anybody from the outside would say, look, it's been 2 months and 8 days of you grieving and crying. You should welcome the break, but if it was up to us, we would do this for months and months more. But the people that accompanied Imam Hussein, the people he surrounded himself with, believed in his mission. And they were okay with being the handful that were distinct. Imam Hussein's very famous statement that my Nana Rasulullah, my Baba Ali, my brother Hassan, none of them had the ashab that I had. That's a big jumla, it's a big statement. And history has now done its best to understand what was so different about Imam Hussein's ashab. And while there are many things, one thing is there was not a single munafiq on the day of Ashura beside Imam Hussein. Please understand this point. The Prophet had the munafiqeen beside him. Imam Ali had the munafiqeen beside him. Imam Mujtaba had munafiqeen beside him. Imam Hussein on the day of Ashura, not one munafiq. And in that era of nifaq, in that era of kufr, in that era of nafs parasti, all these things that Yazid openly would, drink alcohol, openly would gamble, openly would do, he was a fasiq, right? He was openly sin at that era. To be somebody who is khalisan muttaqi was what? Was someone who was distinct. It's that bright yellow shirt in a sea of whites. And yet they would always say that we drown ourselves in Hussein the way he has drowned himself in God. And while I know these are the last few days, inshallah, tomorrow night, as Riyaz Bhai mentioned, we'll look at the shahadat of our 11th Imam. I just want to, and I know it's not marabut to the ending of the Safar, I just want to remember one Sahabi today, because we're talking a little bit about the Ashab today in the Masaib and connecting it back to the speech, and that is of Habib bin Mudahir. I won't take too much of your time. I understand that, it's been a long program already. You've already bardashed for close to an hour. 5 minutes of Masaib at the Masadua. As the day of Ashura came close, armies were being dispatched from Kufa and Sham towards Karbala by Ibn Ziyad. And while each small army and large army entered the plains of Karbala, they would announce their arrival with takbirat. You would hear drums, you would hear sounds, horns sometimes. And every time another army would come on the plains of Karbala and Bibi Zainab would hear the takbirat or she would hear the drums, she would ask Fizza, what's happening? Fizza, what's happening? And she would say, Shahzadi, another army from Kufa has arrived. Another army from Sham has arrived. 7th of Muharram, 8th of Muharram has passed. All these armies, thousands upon thousands now have gathered against Imam Hussein. Bibi Zainab now sends a message to Imam Hussein, Bhaiya, is there not one person that we can call? Not one individual that we can call to come and stand beside you? And Imam Hussein now remembers, yes, there's this one friend of mine, Habib, that I can. So he writes his very famous letter to Habib. 2 versions I've seen. The beginning line of that letter that he writes to Habib, inviting him towards Karbala, he says, Min Hussein ibn Ali ila rajulun faqih. From Hussein ibn Ali to this faqih and muttaqi and this honorable, knowledgeable man. That's one version. The other version that I've seen is the letter says, Min Hussein gharib ila rajulun faqih. From this Hussein who's gharib, from this Hussein who's in ghurbat, from this Hussein who is tanha and alone on the plains of Karbala, to this Habib of mine who is a faqih. The letter now is given to Habib. Habib now at the door reads this letter now. He closes it. His face drops. He's with his family during dinner, some say. His wife looks at him and says, Habib, what is it? It's a letter from my Mullah Hussein. It's a letter from Hussein, yes. What's it say? He's inviting me towards Karbala. Then what are you waiting for? He says, I'm worried about you. What will happen to you once I'm gone? And look at the wife of Habib. She says, if you don't go and serve Imam Hussein, then give me that permission to go myself. And then he says no to his servant. He says, meet me in the outskirts of Kufa in the middle of the night and take me towards Karbala with my horse. He begins now to ride towards Karbala. These last 2 minutes now, everyone is now on the day of Ashura preparing now for the battle now. There's 12 alams now. Imam Hussein gives 11 of them out to various people. The biggest of them, of course, to Abul Fazl Abbas, but there's one alam he sets aside. One alam he sets aside. Someone comes and says, Mawla, can I have the honor of having that 12th alam? He says, no, this alam is for my Habib. This alam is for my Habib. My Habib is coming. My Habib is coming. From the distance now, a rider towards from Kufa now can be seen. Imam Hussein sends Ali Akbar Abul Fazl Abbas, go see who it is. From the distance now, the rider comes closer. Ali Akbar comes back and says, Baba, it's Habib. Habib has arrived. Habib has arrived. The istiqbal, the welcoming of Habib now. He comes off his horse, goes running towards Imam Hussein. They embrace for a very long time. Habib begins to cry. Hussein begins to cry. The sound of takbir can be heard. Now the takbir can be heard from Hussein's army. Inside the khayma, Bibi Zainab says, Fizza, this takbir I hear, what is it? She says, Fizza, she says, Shahzadi, Habib has arrived. Habib has arrived. Zainab goes down into sajda shukr. Ya Allah, we are thankful for the arrival of Habib. Fizza, go and send Habib my salams. Fizza goes to Habib. Hey Habib, the daughter of Fatima sends her salams. Habib falls on the khak of Karbala, picks up the khak on his head. Ya Allah, what day has arrived on the Ahli Haram that someone like the daughter of Ali is sending her salams to someone like me? سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to accept this qaleel ibadat, inshallah. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to give us that tawfiq. Inspire us as parents to raise God-centric children, inshallah. We ask you, Allah, to weaken the hands of the enemies of humanity and to strengthen the mustaza'afin and the oppressed all over the world. We ask you, Allah, to cure all of those of our mu'mineen, brothers and sisters all over the world who have been afflicted by this coronavirus. We ask you, Allah, please help those of our equals in humanity as well against this coronavirus. And finally, Allah, we ask you on this day of Friday that you make us stand beside the Imam of our time when he comes, inshallah. Matam ya Hussein, ya Hussein, ya Hussein.